As you know, at that time, Elon Musk was leading up Doge efforts, and we've taken a great investment in Doge at DoD, and so getting his input on how we make DoD more efficient makes a great deal of sense.
Okay, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest for the world's richest man? Many of the contracts that the DoD is engaged in, billions of dollars of contracts going to his company, and he is, as to your point, was leading Doge, which was involved in cutting hundreds of contracts, but also becoming intimately aware of the platforms and the requirements that would be given out for new contracts. Did you not think it was a conflict of interest to invite someone with financial interests into the Pentagon to have firsthand knowledge of what they could then bid on for their own, enrichment?
Imagine a Pentagon where the world's richest man, a primary government contractor, gets informal briefings on military efficiency while simultaneously leading a government department designed to slash the very contracts his companies hold. Now, imagine a Secretary of Defense who, when asked if he would obey a presidential order to shoot American protesters in the legs, refuses to say no. In a high-tension exchange at the House Armed Services Committee, Congresswoman Jill Tokuda stripped away the polished veneer of the Department of Defense to reveal a world where billion-dollar investments buy high-level access and where the rules of engagement for domestic protests have become chillingly ambiguous. This wasn't just a hearing. It was a forensic examination of the pleasure of the president and whether that pleasure overrides the constitutional rights of the American people.
Here now recognizes the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Tokuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree, we've had many performances today, but what we'd like is some answers. Mr. Secretary, did you invite Elon Musk for a briefing on war plans with China to the Pentagon? Yes or no is simple.
There's been a lot of hyperbole and incorrect reporting around that situation, but we did invite Elon over to come talk to us generally, but there was no war plans being discussed.
Okay, so whose idea was it to invite him to the Pentagon for a briefing? You mentioned you served at the pleasure of the president. Was it the president's will to have him come and be briefed?
Well, as you know, at that time, Elon Musk was leading up Doge efforts, and we've taken a great investment in Doge at DoD, and so getting his input on how we make DoD more efficient makes a great deal of sense.
Okay, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest for the world's richest man? Many of the contracts that the DoD is engaged in, billions of dollars of contracts going to his company, and he is, as to your point, was leading Doge, which was involved in cutting hundreds of contracts, but also becoming intimately aware of the platforms and the requirements that would be given out for new contracts. Did you not think it was a conflict of interest to invite someone with financial interests into the Pentagon to have firsthand knowledge of what they could then bid on for their own, enrichment?
Ma'am, it was just an informal discussion, but I'll tell you, anyone that knows our Defense Department knows we show no preference to any company other than what your capabilities are, and we're grateful for the places where his companies benefit our national defense.
So for a $280 million donation, the world's richest man with companies intimately linked and involved in billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense gain access into the Pentagon. So would you say that any company right now that has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense has access to the Pentagon right now? 1-hour briefings with you personally.
On the regular
I think the
basis,
answer
I
is
meet with many people and many different companies and many different aspects of our defense industrial base to ensure we have the best possible capabilities. It would be imprudent to do
Well, I'm
otherwise.
sure for an investment of $280 million, Elon's investors are quite happy that it's come out into the billions. I want to jump questions right now. Mr. Secretary, on January 6, 2021, rioters and looters attacked federal law enforcement officials, vandalized and destroyed federal government property, and caused an estimated $2.7 billion in damages right here at the Capitol. Would you have sent the National Guard and the Marines in on that day?
Well, unfortunately, President Trump requested the National Guard in advance, and that was...
It took him quite a long time. I'm asking you, as Secretary of Defense, would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day? We had 140 Capitol Police officers injured. One died the next day. Would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines?
As I said, President Trump directed National Guard to be there in advance.
And I think you can look at the record of how long it actually took for him to actually send them in. But it's good to hear that it sounds like you would have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day in which the insurrection was taking place right here at the Capitol. Mr. Secretary, during your confirmation hearing, you failed to deny the conclusion that you would carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs. So let me be direct. Given what we are seeing across the country right now, would you carry out or issue an order by the president for our military to fire upon protesters actively engaging in their civil right to exercise free speech, their First Amendment rights, would you give that order from the president?
I assume you're insinuating what's going on in Los Angeles, and I wouldn't call
Not just
that a
Los
peaceful
Angeles, if you
protest.
take a look at protests throughout the country, it's a simple question. If directed by the president, would you order our military to fire upon protesters? Simple yes or no.
Ma'am, we
Fine.
have, as you know, and as this committee knows, we have standard rules of engagement that are in place that give guidance to our troops, and they abide by them.
I'm asking what you would do. Again, you said you serve at the pleasure of the president. Is that not true?
I do serve at the
So
pleasure.
if the president told you to shoot people in the legs, would you do so? Now, you failed to answer this question as well in your confirmation hearing when asked by members of the Senate.
Because I refuse to accept a false hypothetical that's attempting to put me in a corner and make it look like a
At
representation.
a time when we have more Marines and
Standard
National
rules of
Guard in Los
engagement, and they are
Angeles than
followed.
we do in Syria and Iran alone, I don't think this is a hypothetical. This is an actual situation that we are dealing with right now. So again, I will ask the question, the last 14 seconds I have, would you order our military to shoot at their fellow countrymen if ordered by the president?
I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's
I think we
favorite
know your
word,
answer. Thank you, Mr.
and that
Chair. I
when
yield
it's
back.
invoked in L.A., they were
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady's time's expired.
The lighthouse perspective illuminates two massive fractures in our current national security framework revealed during this testimony. First, the blurring of the defense industrial base. Secretary Hegseth admitted to hosting Elon Musk for informal discussions at the Pentagon, justifying the access through Musk's role in the Department of Government Efficiency (DOG). However, Tokuda's line of questioning exposed the glaring conflict of interest. How can a man whose companies are intimately linked to billions in DoD contracts be given first-hand knowledge of the department's internal requirements? This level of access for a $280 million political investment suggests that efficiency might just be another word for enrichment. Second, we see the normalization of domestic force. When Tokuda pivoted to the deployment of Marines and National Guard in Los Angeles, now exceeding troop levels in Syria and Iran combined, she forced Hegseth to confront the ultimate hypothetical. Would he follow a presidential order to fire on American citizens? Hegseth's refusal to give a direct no, retreating instead into talk of standard rules of engagement, creates a vacuum of moral clarity. By contrasting the 2021 Capitol insurrection with the current situation in LA, Tokuda highlighted a double standard where the military is positioned as a domestic police force and the Secretary of Defense serves as a firewall that has seemingly stopped functioning. Jill Tokuda's closing was a silent but heavy indictment. I think we know your answer. By failing to explicitly state that he would refuse an unlawful order to shoot fellow countrymen, Pete Hegseth has signaled a shift from an apolitical military head to a loyalist executor. At Democracy Watch Daily, we believe that the Secretary of Defense's primary duty is to the Constitution, not the personal whims or hypotheticals of any president. When billion-dollar contractors get one-on-one briefings and the military is deployed against civilian protesters, the very definition of national defense has been corrupted. We are watching a transformation where the Pentagon is no longer a shield for the people, but a tool for those with the most investment. If a Secretary of Defense refuses to rule out the use of lethal force against American protesters, has the military's mission shifted from protecting the Republic to protecting the administration? We want to hear from you. How do you define an unlawful order in 2026? Comment below and let's discuss the future of our national defense. Subscribe to Democracy Watch Daily to keep the light on.